Hey guys, we got a fake stall team. Let's get right into it. They start off with the Hoopa, I start with Scarlet, immediately go for the Terra Fairy to resist that Hyperspace Fury. Go with the Torch Song, do about half, get my boost. He then switches into the Galarian Slowking. I go for another Torch Song, do a huge chunk and get another boost. He switches again into the Excalibur. I go for the Earth Power, do a huge chunk, he just hangs on. Goes for the Icicle Spear and just takes out my Skeledirge. I then switch into my Garganicle. He just has to switch back into the Slowking. I go for the Earthquake, he just hangs on. He then just has to switch again into his Iron Treads, gets that Quark Drive boost, I fire off another Earthquake to a huge chunk. He decides to set up some Stealth Rocks, I go for one more Earthquake, take out Iron Treads. He then goes into his Enamorus, goes for that Moonblast as a huge chunk, I go for the Heavy Slam, one-shot the Enamorus. Hoopa decides to come out again, goes for the Hyperspace Fury, takes that Garganicle. I then go into my Hisui Goodra. He goes for another Hyperspace Fury, Goodra just hangs on. I go for the Flash Cannon, Hoopa just hangs on. I get a lucky special defense drop, doesn't matter though, he goes for another Hyperspace Fury, takes me out. Big boy Chestnut decides to come in, takes some rocks damage. He switches into his Excalibur, I go for the Earthquake, take him out. He uses that to pivot into his Iron Valiant, gets that Quark Drive boost. I decide to switch into my Clodsire, take a little bit of damage, eat up that Moonblast. Get some health from the lefties. He goes for a knockoff, does a nice chunk, gets rid of my leftovers. I go for the Gunk Shot, one-shot the Iron Valiant. He goes back into Hoopa, goes for a Psychic, takes out my Clodsire. I go back into the Chestnut, take a little bit of damage, tank a Psychic, get that special defense lower, go for the Earthquake, take out the Hoopa. His last Pokemon is in the Galarian Slowking, go for the Earthquake, take him out. Good game. At this time, I ask you guys to please like, comment, share, and subscribe as it really helps with the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Game 2. I start with my Garganicle, they start with Cinderace and immediately U-turn into Landorus, get that Intimidate and avoid the Earthquake. They then follow up with that Taunt, I go for the Ice Punch to a huge chunk to Lando and get that Lucky Freeze. My opponent then switches into the Goldango, I go for another Ice Punch to barely anything. Get some lefties back, I then switch into my Skeledirge, he goes for that Trick, gives me that Scarf. He then switches back into the Landorus, intimidates my Gator, I fire off a Torch Song, do a nice chunk, get my boost. Thaw him out, give him another Torch Song, take out the Landorus. He then decides to go into the Hoopa Unbound, gives us that Dark Pulse, takes out my Gator. I go back into the Garganicle, he switches into his Dragapult, I fire off an Earthquake, do about half. Get some lefties back, he goes for the U-turn, and uses that to pivot right back into the Hoopa. I go for the Ice Punch, do a little bit to Hoopa. He then goes for the Trick, gives me those specs, I fire off another Earthquake, he just hangs on. He fires off another Dark Pulse, Garganicle eats that up, go for another Earthquake, take him out. He goes back into the Goldango, goes for the Make It Rain, takes down my Salt Stack. I then go into my Slowbro, he switches into his Dragapult, I start setting up with those Calm Minds right in front of his face. He goes for the Will-O-Wisp, gives me that bad burn, I give him a Psychic, take him out. His next Pokemon is the King Gambit, he gets that Overlord boost, I go for the Terra Seal, he goes for the Caltalk Lead, does nothing, I go for the Flamethrower, take him out in one shot. He goes back into the Cinderace, goes for the Pyro Ball, takes out my Slowbro. I go into the Clodsire, he goes for the U-turn, does barely anything, uses that to pivot into the Goldango, I go for the Earthquake, take out Goldango. His last Pokemon is in the Cinderace, he goes for the Terra Fire Pyro Ball, Clodsire just hangs on, go for the Earthquake, take him out. Good game. Alright, let's get into Game 3. They start with the Galarian Articuno, I start with the Garganicle. They go right for that U-turn, just to pivot into the Alolan Muk, I completely whiff the Stone Edge. He goes for that knockoff, gets rid of my leftovers, I fire off an Earthquake to a huge chunk. He goes for the Drain Punch, does a little bit, gets some of that health back. I fire off another Earthquake, take out the Muk. His next Pokemon is in the Iron Treads. I use this opportunity to switch into my Chestnut. He goes for the Earthquake, does absolutely nothing. He then goes for a knockoff, gets rid of my Assault Vest. I go for the Close Combat, one-shot the Iron Treads. He then goes into the Gyarados, intimidates my Chestnut. I switch into my Hisui Goodra. He starts Dragon Dancing right in front of my face. Fires off an Earthquake, one-shots my Goodra. I then go back into the Chestnut. He goes for the Thunder Wave, paralyzes me. I give him a Thunder Punch, take out the Gyarados. He goes back into his Articuno, goes for the Hurricane, takes out my Chestnut. My Gator then decides to come out. He goes for a Shadow Ball, does a huge chunk. I go for a Shadow Ball right back to a huge chunk right to him, get that special defense lower, but he gets a competitive boost. I then go for the Terra Fairy to resist the Shadow Ball, get another special defense lower, I fire off one back, take out the Articuno. He goes into his Vaporeon, I go for the Terra Blast to a nice chunk, finally go down to the Life Orb. I then go into my Slowbro, he goes for the Yawn, makes my bro drowsy, I start calming my mind over here getting those boosts. I switch into my Clodsire, he goes for the Haze, gets rid of those stat boosts, goes for the Chilling Water, which now I'm immune to, I fire for Gunk Shot, he gets that Berry. He fires off the Ice Beam, does a huge chunk with the crit, I go for another Gunk Shot, do a big chunk to him. He then goes for the Terra Ice Beam, Clodsire just hangs on, I go for another Gunk Shot, take him out. His last Pokemon is on the Goodra, he whiffs the Blizzard, I go for the Earthquake, do a huge chunk to him, gets him back from the lefties, he whiffs another Blizzard, I go for the Earthquake, take him out. Good game. Alrighty, and that's the video. Please let me know what you guys think down below and stay tuned for future content. Peace!